Hello and welcome back to this epic series where we look at the humans versus the chess computers. We look at the progression of strategies evolving over history, strategies developed by humans to combat the ever-increasing power and intelligence of chess AI. This that we will look at today is game 5 of the 6-game match played in 1996 between Kasparov and the supercomputer Deep Blue, that could calculate an astounding 200 million positions per second. The match is tied, and Kasparov is back to playing with the black pieces. He deviates from the Sicilian defense and plays e5. We see knight to f3, and we must understand that Kasparov is under pressure in this game, even though the match is tied. Because in chess it is an advantage to play with the white pieces, because you get the first move and therefore you can choose the battlefield as and as Sun Tzu said, he who chooses the battlefield wins the war. And Kasparov's last game with the white pieces, he got outplayed a bit and had to force a draw with the white pieces. And now he has his back to the wall with the black pieces, but not all is over. There are 2 games left of the match, and of course it's not certain that he will lose. Deep Blue exchanges the knights here, captures towards the center critically. So how will Kasparov try to survive today? Well, he strikes in the center, trying to undouble his pawns. Deep Blue obliges, captures the pawn, and now these 2 pawns are better than they were before. But of course Deep Blue has no problems at all and just castles. It's King Kasparov also castles. This is a very balanced position. Not a lot going on actually. But Deep Blue starts to turn the screws a little bit with this bishop coming here, pinning the knight to the queen so it cannot move, because we would lose the queen. So this is crossing the middle of the board, and now white is invading black's territory. Kasparov ignores it for now. Plays pawn to c6, just having a very, very stable structure here in the center. Sort of a semi-Slav structure, you could almost say. And Deep Blue continues to add pressure, developing the queen, looking at the knight. The bishop drops back humbly, defending the knight, so that we would not get doubled pawns here. And Deep Blue is just ahead in development, gets its pieces into play quicker. Kasparov tries to keep up, and a grandmaster level move, like a really subtle nice move with this knight coming back. So the knight is starting a maneuver to reroute into a more optimal square, because on this square you can see it can't really go here, so it needs a better route into the position. Kasparov tries to kick the bishop. The bishop does drop back, and I think it's now time that we can take stock of the position a little bit and talk about what the keyword is for this game today. We can see both have castled. We can see that there is a 3 versus 3 pawn situation going on the king side, and 3 versus 3, but 2 pawn islands for black, slight disadvantage, 1 pawn island for white, slight advantage, but this pawn island is controlling the center, so that is a slight advantage. So roughly that should be about equal. So what's really going on is that white has a bit superior development, and they all have the same pieces. Kasparov plays the bishop to d6, and let me talk about a word that is very, very important when talking about computers. And that word is consistency. Computer jumps into the center of the board, now attacking this square, looking potentially at some point at coming here. Consistency. Imagine for a moment, if you will, that you were always playing at your best. So I'm not asking you to imagine that you play better chess than you are currently capable of. I'm not saying you are 500 elo high. I'm saying that you have to imagine you are like a grandmaster or something. Just take the best chess you have ever played and then imagine that you always played at that level completely consistently. What if you never got careless when you had a winning position? What if you never threw away the advantage due to such carelessness? What if you never got upset if you made a mistake, but just kept playing consistently at your best? What if you never got nervous? What if you never got offended that a draw offer was made in a position you thought was better? What if you just always played at a completely flat level? Consistency is the most important quality in a chess player, and it is vital in the current top players' dominance. Magnus Carlsen is the most consistent chess player, perhaps of all time. Consistency. But we all know, as humans, that it is hard, not to say impossible, to be consistent. It's hard it's hard to perform at the same level every day. It's hard to play at the same level. It's hard to perform at your job, in all sorts of interactions at the same level every day. And therefore, we struggle. And we are only playing against humans. Here, Kasparov is playing against the, as he said, terrible, faceless monster. He drops back with his bishop. Deep Blue exchanges the pawns, chipping away at his advantage in the center. Now this pawn is isolated and weak. It starts exchanging defensive pieces. And it reroutes the queen to a more optimal square. Of course, there is a trick involved here. You may think, why can't Kasparov come and capture the knight? Well, if you're banking against Deep Blue making a tactical mistake, you are sorely mistaking that check. King takes and you lose your queen. So, of course, Kasparov did not play that. Instead, he jumped in with the knight attacking the queen. The knight is exchanged for the bishop. How do you want to recapture in this position? Because now it gets remarkable. Now the narrative changes. But one of the players at the board did not understand, did not notice, did not appreciate that the narrative changed. Kasparov can recapture with the rook, or he can recapture with the pawn. It looks like it's almost the same maybe, but this pawn, weak in the center, if it comes here, it can start working together with its comrades, with its friends. And you could say, well, isn't that a disadvantage? Kasparov played this because the pawn get further away from these, and now we have this 2-1 majority over here. So in order to figure out how to recapture, you have to rely on human intuition, and evaluate extremely precisely if you can stop these pawns, because of course there are 100% more pawns for white on this side on the board than there is for black. And you have to figure out, if you capture with the pawn, what can you do with that? What kind of a position is this? What kind of strategy does this position call for? So what do you think he did? Rook or pawn? Kasparov captured with the pawn, and the computer played pawn to b3. And here the computer offered a draw, and Kasparov, with the black pieces, refused the draw, saying, "Oh, I don't think you realize what you just did in allowing me to get this pawn here to be able to work with my other pawns." So he refused the draw with the back against his wall, and he played on. He made this move, rook coming here, x-raying the queen just a little bit. And interestingly, the computer was right in its evaluation of the position when it offered the draw. If you put it into a modern, much stronger chess computer like Stockfish, it will say that the evaluation of the position after pawn to b3 was roughly equal. But now you see this pawn push here. And with that, we start to understand something absolutely amazing. That just after offering the draw, playing b3 and offering the draw, having a completely correct evaluation of the position, having played basically perfect chess, right after that, Deep Blue started making mistakes. Mistakes like this one. Rook coming here. Of course, it doesn't, a mistake by Deep Blue doesn't look like a mistake I would play. I play a mistake, I hang my queen. It makes a mistake that you can see 5, 6, 7 moves later. Bishop comes here. Queen comes here. Bishop just drops back. So Kasparov is actually going for an attack against the king, but he is being super patient. This cannot be captured because rook takes rook would end in checkmate. So the queen comes here. A further mistake. Why has it suddenly started to play badly? Could it be that it simply couldn't imagine how to keep playing when there was no logical reason that it could see to hope for victory? It just couldn't come up with an original thought of how to play this position for victory. And Kasparov had that thought, and he started playing that strategy, and the machine just couldn't find the right moves because it couldn't match that original thought by Kasparov, who now plays f4. So look at these pawns getting very close to the king. The rook slides up, and the queen slides over, getting ready to support more pawn pushes. And here we see the critical mistake by Deep Blue. Pawn coming to g3, trying to break up these pawns, but this leaves the light squares around the king extremely vulnerable, and the computer is now in deep trouble. Deep Blue, deep trouble. Kasparov slides his rook up, ready to come over, attack the king. See, pawn to a6. Machine's trying to push the advantage it has over here, the advantage that just some moves ago made it understand that the position was equal, because this outbalanced, it thought, the attacking potential, the attack it could make with these, but it's much too slow. King comes to h7, no back rank checks. We don't want any back rank checks as black here to stop our attack from developing. The king tries to do something similar on the white side, but the queen gets closer and closer. f3, and you can see everything is just about to crumble. Will we capture here? No. Something crazy is happening here. Kasparov has played consistently, almost perfect chess in this entire game against the machine, who was also playing consistently right up until it offered the draw. Then it started making mistakes, and now Kasparov has this position where he does the impossible. He outcalculates the machine and plays e3, attacking the rook. The rook has to move. What is the plan? How will he continue? e2. Now this pawn is dangerously close to becoming a queen. You can see it, you can almost see it materialize on the board. Deep Blue desperately tries a tactical punch against Kasparov and captures on f4 with an attack on the queen. Now there is so many ways that you could move the queen, try to threaten this still, you could capture this, there's so many things you could do in this position, but there is one way to win. It just requires absolutely precise calculation. Is it this? Is it what Kasparov is doing? Pushes the pawn. It becomes a queen. In the process, this queen hangs. Pawn takes queen. But queen takes queen. Absolutely crucial in this position. But rook takes queen, of course, absolutely crucial. And at the last moment of this tactical sequence, we say rook takes knight. And Kasparov did give up a pawn in the process, but he did win a knight, and he did end in this position with a bishop and a rook against a rook. He only has 3 pawns to the computer's 5 pawns, but this is a huge material advantage for black in this position. We will look at the rest of the game, the vain attempts by Deep Blue to fight on, but the position is hopeless, barring a horrible mistake, or maybe human mistake from Kasparov. So this is one of the most amazing games of chess that I have ever seen. Many of the most amazing games of chess that I have seen has been played by Garry Kasparov, who was world #1 consistently, without fail, for 20 years, who is the second highest rated player of all time before rating inflation. Rook comes to c3, who won 6 world championships. Bishop nicely blocks the rook from entering, so the rook goes back, and who basically retired at the age of 45, being #1 on the rating list because he simply had nothing more to prove in chess. Just an absolutely incredible player. However, this match is not over yet, and the history of Kasparov versus computers is not over yet. Let's take a look at how this game ends. Deep Blue finally has to exchange the rooks, giving Kasparov almost no way to mess up. Now he has this bishop. It is extremely strong. Why? It's attacked by the king. Why can't this pawn become a queen? Why can't Deep Blue use these pawns to overwhelm this pawn and threaten to make a queen? It is because of this bishop. So you can see now it's controlling this square. Black tries to get up, hurt this pawn down, make a queen. That is the chance to win. But it is matched by the opponent's king. So now you can't advance this pawn because it will be captured. Okay, we can maybe go here, but Kasparov just says, well, I'll play here, because if you do this, the immense power of this bishop on this battlefield will mean check, king will have to move, and we capture the pawn. So you cannot advance the pawn. So what can you do? Could you try to hurt this pawn? Well, it's never getting past this pawn. You can't move this. It will be captured. And how are you even coming to defend this pawn? Kasparov can lock the game completely, play something like this. Just lock the game completely. Deep Blue has no moves, and he can use this bishop to come in and capture this pawn, or he can just go with the king and capture this pawn. Now he will have a 2-1 majority over here. On the king side, he can go down and make a queen and win easily. So in this position, in 1996, in Philadelphia, the Deep Blue supercomputer resigned the game and lost with white against Kasparov. What a superhuman level of consistency from the human. Sometimes humans are just amazing. Before I end the video here, I want to say a big thank you to all of you awesome people who watch, and a special warm thanks to my patrons who support me here and helps me pay the rent at the studio. Your support really helps to ensure that I can keep making these videos and helps me improve the quality. If you would like to support me and are not already a patron, there is a link in the description. I would appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.